What up, guys? Welcome to the podcast today. Today we have one of my buddies, training partners, and students, I guess you would say,
Yeah.
Brandon. Right? I say student is like one of those things where I don't know, like you work with people and you end up spending more time with them or help them out with a lot of things that aren't necessarily just jujitsu technical related. And so, like he'll call me like one of his mentors, and so I guess it's like a mentee, student, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll be on the podcast today with us, and he will be talking about it. The last time we had him on, he was just heading to go back to school to get his master's degree, and then he decided not to do that, and then he's back in training, and he's getting ready to leave again, this time to go to Canada. You'll hear why, and you'll hear why he left school to come back to jiu-jitsu and everything else, and so we'll get into it. As always, guys, thanks to our sponsors for helping. By the way, I saw someone post a picture the other day, and it said like when the podcast has their their ad reads at the beginning, and it was just a fast forward button. And so I totally understand. Hey, listen, I get you.
They posted a fast forward button of them doing it.
And then he said, he goes, sorry, Jiu-Jitsu. And
it's all good.
It's all good. Because again, it's one of those things where, this is what helps support the podcast. Because obviously, like, Eugene's got a family, and he's got work and a full-time job. I have to coach guys, and I have a full-time gig that I'm doing. Probably I'm usually working some serious hours, but it probably doesn't look that way. And so again, it's tough to do this stuff. And again, but thank you guys for being here with the podcast. Yeah. Anyway, thanks to our sponsors. You can start pressing that fast forward button now. Charlotte's Web CBD. You can check them out at charlottesweb.com. Again, for a lot of you guys, I know that a lot of our demographic I'm mostly talking to, a lot of you guys that listen typically are 30 and up. I did a survey recently with you guys on the Chew Crew email list, and I think it was because I got like 8,000 surveys. Like 70% of the people that are on that list are like 30 and up.
That's awesome.
And then when I look at my analytics for YouTube, it's very similar. So again, I know a lot of you guys that are listening. You guys are a little bit older. You're training and whatever. And as we know, the older you get, the more your lifestyle and recovery comes into play. Like when you're younger, what do? You can just do whatever. I remember when I was like in my early 20s, I could stay up till 3 a.m. I could go drink. I could party. Not that I partied much. I didn't drink much either, but I could do it if I wanted to. And then I could get up the next morning and go train. No problem. You could just go. Now, I get injured if I'm not careful. If I get myself run down too much and train too hard and not get enough sleep and recovery, I get injured or I get sick. So there's all that stuff going on. And so again, I have to be really dialed in with both my sleep. I'm very dialed in with my sleep routine, the type of food that I eat. Everything is very dialed in because again, I want to get the most from my body. And again, one of the things that I do use is different supplements, right? I have a lot of different supplements that I take for different purposes. And one of those is CBD. And again, I have CBD supplements for the purpose of trying to help me recover. If you're an older person, by older, I mean like 30 plus, because in athletics, that's considered older. It's helpful. And so again, I like the supplement for what it's used, what I use it for. And again, you guys can try it out if you'd like. And if you'd like to save 30% in the process, you can go to Charlotte's Web's website, pick out whatever supplement you want. You can pick out the tinctures where it's like a little eyedropper. You can have the ones that come with different, not chemicals, but different. I mean, everything's a chemical, but different supplements that are added into it. Like they might have one with theanine. They might have one with a certain type of anti-inflammatory sort of supplement, whatever it is. You can pick out the one you want. And then again, use Chewjitsu 30, Chewjitsu 30 for 30% off. Also, if you guys want to check out some really good jiu-jitsu gear and apparel, you can go to epicrollbjj.com. In a lot of my not shirts, but a lot of times my web videos where I have a shirt on that's not a jiu-jitsu shirt, if you see like a name of a choke, like a triangle choke or kimura or whatever it is, if you see those shirts, typically that's a Epic Roll shirt. I'm a big fan of Matt's products. Matt's the guy that owns it. He's a black belt, does jiu-jitsu. He trains jiu-jitsu just like us, rolls in the mats just like us. And he's making jiu-jitsu stuff for people like us. And I've been wearing his stuff for a number of years. It's good quality stuff, good designs, good customer service. I'm a fan, so I share his stuff with you guys. If you want to check him out, go to epicrollbjj.com. He has a new code for us. If you haven't listened in a while, it's Jiu-Jitsu 20 for 20% off, Jiu-Jitsu 20. Also, guys, if you want to step up your grooming game, if you're a man or have a man in your life that needs to do that, check out manscaped.com. They're the premier men's grooming company out there. You've probably seen them in everything from TV commercials to probably every podcast or whatever you listen to. And again, they're putting out a marketing effort to put their stuff out there. And again, I like their stuff. I do use their products. Again, every product that has been, we've probably turned away most of the sponsors that have approached us. They were one of the sort of the difficult ones because I was like, I don't really want to use them, but I'll try their product. I don't really want to talk about beard trimmers or ball trimmers or any of that stuff, but they make a good product. I used their soap this morning. I have to use the beard trimmer later because I'm getting hairy. Although I might just keep my sweater.
There you go. Keep it. Stay warm.
I was talking to Jess, like my chest hair right now, as long as it's ever been since we've been together. Like I feel like I've got a sweater on. But again, anyway, sidetrack tangent over. If you want to get some really good grooming products for a man, whether you are a man or you have a man in your life that needs them, check them out at manscaped.com. They've got everything from beard trimmers and body trimmers, whatever you need. They have everything from that to balms, lotions, skin type stuff, beard balms, the whole thing. Anything a man needs for grooming, you can check them out. And you can get it at their website at manscaped.com. The promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order, and that comes with free shipping as well. And guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by doing a couple things. One, you could give us a review on whatever podcast website you listen to. That's one way to do it. That's sort of a cost-free version that'll sort of take you like probably 2 seconds to do. And you can just give us a nice review and it helps out. Sincerely does. And for those of you that do it, appreciate you. And then you can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Again, you can go there. We have an exclusive library of content that you can get access to for an inexpensive price. And again, it's updated regularly. So you'll have little bits of content, everything from warm-up routines for jiu-jitsu to rolls in videos that I've never released anywhere else on the website or on the internet. Also an ad-free version of this podcast in case for you guys that don't like listening to the ads, you can do that. And last but not least, guys, if you want to join my Chew Crew email list, which I'll talk about in the podcast at some point, you can get it at my website at chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. Upon joining, you'll get access to a couple free ebooks that I give away. One is on developing a game plan. The other one is on breaking through training plateaus where you're hitting that sticky point. Brandon actually talks about some of the strategies that I use in that book today to sort of focus in on his training, and it creates a lot of progress. And again, if you want to figure out what that stuff is, you can get it on our website, chewjitsu.net/join. And guys, one sort of random side thing real quick before we go. I recently teamed up with another company, and we're running a little thing of tournaments. We're running some tournaments across the U.S. They are dubbed unimaginably the Jiu-Jitsu Opens. So again, if you guys want to go to one, here's the deal with them. I just want to give you the rundown real quick, and then we'll get to the podcast. If you guys want to check them out, just go to any of my stuff. You'll find it. Any of my website stuff or social media stuff, and you'll find it. The Jiu-Jitsu Open will be a sub only with a ref's decision. It is a Madison bracketing, which means we're not going to have weight classes. You show up in shape. We'll pair you up with up to 5 people of roughly the same weight. That's a division. And then we do round robin, which means you will have up to 4 matches per division, right? Because basically you're going to go with each person in your division. And so the purpose of doing this is I want you guys to get experience, right? Again, you'll hear Brandon talk about it. It's so important to get that competition experience. When you go to a competition, the reps are so valuable. And in a lot of jiu-jitsu competitions, one of the rough parts about it is you go into the competition, what happens? You lose your first match, you're not used to competing, and then you're out. So you spent all the money to travel, all the money for the competition, everything else, you're out. So what this is going to do is this is going to give you a chance, if you are a young competitor that is biting at the bit to get a lot of matches, to test themselves and to figure out how their game works, this is going to be a great option. And really what I also wanted to do is I wanted to take the fear of going for it off the table. If you lose your match, guess what happens? You have one right next after that match is over. You're not going to lose and go out. So what I want you to do is go out there and go for the submission, go after it. And I want you to essentially experience that feeling, because it's a beautiful feeling when you go out to a competition. And because a lot of people, for instance, when they can perform in competitions, they actually perform worse in competitions than they do in the gym. And the gym, they're like, man, I'm so good in the gym. And then I go to competitions, I freeze up. I'm just not the same person. But then at a certain point, if you get good at competing, this is the case for me, I perform much better in competitions than I do in the gym. and because I know how to deal with it. And when you feel that, it's like a liberating experience. And so I want to help facilitate that process in people. And it only comes when you can basically turn off your brain and go. And, you know, in a future competition that has points, that has all these things, you can deal with it then. But at these tournaments, you will have that happen by basically having matches right after the other one, even if you lose, so you can go for the finish and you can see what your game really is made of. So anyway, check it out, Jiu-Jitsu Open. You can check it out on my website or social media. Let's get into this podcast with Brandon.
Do you ever notice like how your voice kind of changes as you get like from like 4 or 5 years ago? Like you listen to yourself, like
my voice is deeper.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, and I think that's
weird, right?
I think it's from a couple things. One is I think there's probably, you know, I feel like as you get older, the more you speak, the more your voice sort of takes on a different tonality. But I think also too, it's about being able to speak at a nice, like a bit of a slower cadence. So like when I started doing videos in the beginning, I would speak a little faster because I'm a little bit more nervous doing the video. And so it naturally brings the octave up a little bit. Whereas
I got you.
You know, you like for instance, if we can relax, we can make our voice deeper, right? Like, so I think that as you get a little bit more relaxed, you can sort of settle yourself down and you can speak in a deeper tone. Because if you ever notice when someone speaks, like I do it, you do it, you're not as bad. But like when you hear Chad does it too, when you hear someone get excited and they'll do this thing where their pitch goes up really high. Like, what? Wait a sec. You know, like, you know, that kind of thing. You'll hear that from an excited tone. So I think as you get more relaxed in those situations, your voice comes down.
Are you telling me I don't get excited ever?
No, I'm
That's
sure you
really
do.
sad.
I'm sure you do. But like, it's just something I've noticed, like you're not as, you don't have as big of a mouth as me and Brandon.
Yeah.
So I feel like when you say something, you're a little bit more measured sometimes, whereas like we speak kind of out of our ass at times. And so like when we speak, it's like really fast. We'll just start responding to something. And every now and then I can hear like you'll do it. And like I said, a lot of them will do it.
It's probably emotional scarring from putting my foot in my mouth too many times.
Yeah.
I've done it and I keep doing it.
Yeah.
But that's like where good shit comes out though. Like you get some magic if you kind of go on a tangent.
Sometimes you get some magic. Sometimes you get a big pile of garbage.
Yeah. Sometimes it just keeps going when it should stop. Too, so, but I'm getting better at it.
I'm getting better at that part. Sometimes I'll start going on tangent. I'll say, hold on a second. I don't need to go on a tangent about this. I don't need to.
Do you think you'll ever release the video of you in the button down shirt?
Wait, what video?
Nobody's ever heard about this. I've seen it. It's the holy grail of jiu-jitsu videos. I think it should be worth thousands of dollars.
I need to post that on Instagram.
So
I asked Chewy about it one time, and I was like,
"It's on my hard drive." So it's on one of my hard drives from like that. So what it was is basically back in like I think it was like 2011. We were trying to come up with videos because you know this is the wild west of like you know internet marketing internet marketing but gym marketing stuff, and so we were trying to come up with this little series of videos to give to people when they were like signing up, right? What we eventually came up with was only marginally better because it was me and Chad and it was very you know
I thought it was amazing.
Shut up. So basically
so good.
What it was is it was me trying to do these videos to explain, like we took the top 10 questions that we get from new people coming in to do MMA and jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. And it was me trying to explain these videos. And, you know, I didn't know how really to present myself. Like, should I be wearing a gi? Should I be wearing a t-shirt? You know, the dumb shit that you think about. I should have just wore a damn gym t-shirt and that would have been fine. But I was like, well, maybe I should be presentable. So I wore a button-down shirt to answer the questions, even though that's not the costume essentially that we wear. And there's a lot of bloopers. There's just because it's me trying to speak and be whatever, and I could speak in front of a whole crew at that time, no problem. But then you put me in front of that, and there's a lot of bloopers of me like basically getting angry at the camera and just angry at life because I can't get these things out.
It's literally the whole thing's a blooper. Yeah. But it's like if somebody's ever not comfortable being in front of camera and they see like that and they see Chewy now, it's like first of all, he's clean shaven, like completely clean shaven at the
handsome baby face,
just sitting there and like rigid and stiff. And I was like, you know, it just kind of, and now you're yourself, like you're your own like freaking person.
I was already I was already that person in the gym.
Correct.
When I was in front of the camera, it was really awkward because you're sort of conversing with an inanimate object. I liken it. I call it the mechanical eyeball staring back at you. And so it's really hard to convey like emotion and like feeling through that. You have to learn how to do that. It's a skill. But yeah, it's just reps, you know. And I actually share some of my really old bad stuff inside like a marketing program that I have, because I'm like, I want you guys to see this, because this is really bad. I don't think I have that one though. I think I'll put that in there for him. That would be a good one.
That is worth the price of admission.
I'll dig that. I'm gonna make a note of that. I'll dig that.
It's just so good. Like, I think it's just good. Like, it's kind of funny, but also
it's absolutely hilarious.
It is, but it's actually really good to see like the contrast. It's
So you should send that to me whenever you're
no where this will stay behind a
paywall.
Like, if you're gonna see this, there's gonna be a reason to it. You know, but I mean, to me it really goes down to this, like this is like those like little lessons that you have from like grappling and stuff, because you grew up on the mat. You're still a young guy, but you became an adult on the mats. I did as well, and it's one of those lessons where you kind of like, it's a lesson you learn through grappling, and it becomes analogous to everything else, which was, I realized that like when I was wrestling, when I was doing jiu-jitsu, sometimes there was no quick fix. It was literally like, you just got to put your nose to the grinder and you got to get your reps in. You got to go drill it. You got to practice it. You got to make your attempts during live work. And you just got to do it. And that's what you have to. There's no way around it. And that's what it was.
Yeah, there is. You just play games.
Games. You know, but you just gotta put your work in, because again, there's no way around it. You have to get your reps in one way or the other. And I think that's the takeaway from that. Like, right, like everybody wants like shit right now. It's like sometimes you just gotta put your reps in.
When did you start recording videos? I don't even know. I've never asked you this.
So that was 2011, early 2012.
Wow.
And then I would dabble a little bit. It's a long story. So I wanted to actually start doing YouTube videos back in 2009. And I remember I recorded a video. I was trying to, and I remember this is why I'm really funny about, like, I don't like, only certain people can be around the gym when I'm recording, because I don't like, if you've never done it, you don't understand. But I was trying to record a video of me basically sharing the gis that I like, because there were no gi review websites back then. And I remember being like, money was tight. And I was like, I'm looking for a gi that's going to be good for me. And then I couldn't find one. Well, I got a bunch of gis at one point. I was like, well, I'll just review these gis to help someone else that's in that situation. And so I was trying to review these gis. And I remember just like having the same problem of like conversing and just whatever, doing stuff that normally I could do. And my girlfriend at the time was like sitting there laughing at me, just bawling laughing, because it was such a clear contrast of like, this guy's normally not so tongue-tied, now he can't speak and whatever else. And so then I was like, I'm just not doing this. And then a couple years later, I tried to, and it was like it's like, what did they have in like the hero's journey? They talk about, there's the call to the adventure, and then there's always the refusal of the call. Something gets in the way. So if you ever watch a movie, every time, like for any of you guys watch the movies, anytime you watch a movie now, there will always be a situation in the beginning where a character is in, like, sort of said, hey, we have to go do this thing. And then they, because they spend the first 10 minutes sort of giving you a chance to see who the character is. And then there's like at the 10-minute mark, usually roughly, give or take, it's time to go see the world.
Yeah.
And they always try to resist that. And then eventually they do it anyway. And so it was like, I felt like that was what was going on. But in earnest, when I actually started recording videos in earnest, it was like, I'm doing this. I started dabbling with some regularity in like 2015.
Oh, wow.
So let me ask you guys this. So Brandon, you have a pretty popular Instagram channel where you do tons of videos on wrestling, and Chewy, you have,
YouTube's grown too.
Yeah, YouTube as well. And so I want to ask both of you guys, was there a video or like a moment where it kind of started to take off, and what do you think that was? So like, Brandon, I'll ask you first, because you've been doing Instagram and
2.5 years.
2.5 years. So when do you think like it started just to kind of like take off, and what was like the thing that did it, or do you feel like, if you can pinpoint?
Yeah, so I was posting for about a year, just picture post, after I went to B team, and James Smith was like, you should just start posting every day. And it didn't blow up until I did a wrestling camp in Belfry, Kentucky, which is like close to West Virginia. And Katie, my girlfriend, she recorded all like 30 techniques, because it was a 5-day wrestling camp. So I taught a ton. She recorded all of them on my phone. And I was like, honestly, not sure what content to post. I did not think I was going to post technique videos, but she just happened to record it. I was like, okay, I need to post every day anyways. So every day for like 30 days, I posted videos. And then like around like the 20-day mark, like I gained like 10,000 followers, and then like around like the 30-day mark, I gained like 25,000 extra followers in like that 10 days because the reels had just started to become really popular. So I think I got really lucky that as I started to post, reels, specifically technique for jiu-jitsu and wrestling, became a really big thing. And again, I just so happened to be in a situation where like, like one or two of them like blew up, like got like 30 million views or something like that, because at the time Instagram was like opening the floodgate.
They're giving that juice.
Yeah.
The algorithm juice.
Exactly. And then I went from like, so for a year, I started at like 3,000 when I first started posting every day to like, I don't know, 7,000, 8,000. And then when I started posting those videos daily, I went from like 7,000 to 8,000 all the way to like 35,000, 40,000. And that was like in the span of like a month.
Wow.
And then I was just like, okay, I'm gonna start doing this every day. And then obviously I knew Chewy, and I was like, oh, I like what he does. So I kind of want to do something similar to that. A little clearly different, right? Like we're different people, but in my own way, I was just like, I saw momentum, and then I saw him, and I was just like, oh, this is like not a weird thing to do. Like so I got lucky. 2021, like summer of 2021 is really when summer of 2022 is really when it started to pop off.
Is there anything like, what's the feedback specifically? Why do you think people are drawn to, obviously you're phenomenal at wrestling and you have a great way to teach it. Is there something you think about like your videos that stood out that kind of attracted, because probably you get a lot of jiu-jitsu people watching it, but probably some wrestling, a lot of your stuff is very useful for just strictly wrestling as well.
Honestly, I just like, I got lucky. I think lots of people, I find that like after I started posting constantly and after like like I said, the floodgate got open, it kind of closed a little bit, but I think I came in at like the right time. And yeah, I think I have great wrestling, and I think that's like obvious in its own way, but I think there's also much better wrestlers who are posting stuff too, who didn't blow up, not necessarily because their content wasn't good, but because of the timing. And I think that like, that's the reality of it, right? Is like, I got in at like the right time, and now I find that it's a bit harder to blow up compared to like 2022, early 2023, when reels were promoted a lot more, unless you're posting like ridiculous things. Like now, in order for like a reel to seriously blow up, I find that in my niche specifically, it has to be some like ridiculous stuff, like crazy technique or stupid trendy videos. But when I started posting, I think Instagram was just like, guys, we want people to post reels. And I was one of the first people in the wrestling for jiu-jitsu niche that was posting them like daily. So I think I just really got lucky.
Yeah, you were just inevitably, you timed it well, not purposely, but just it happened because, like you said, there was less competition, and Instagram was really pushing those reels, like where it's so like, and this is like one of those things where we talked about this before. Why you don't want to, if you're trying to run this thing for a business or support your business, you don't want to run it like, you don't want to depend on Instagram, YouTube, or any of them. It's fine to have them, but that isn't where you really want to depend on the backbone, because it's like for Instagram, we work together on this stuff. So it's like one day it'll be picture posts. We're going to give them the juice. And literally I can take posts that I've used before, because you think they get drowned and you can't really look them up in Instagram. Sure. So we'll use them. Let's say a year later, I use the same post. Okay. Well, this year it was like, it got nothing. Or this year got way more than last year. It's like, well, what's the difference? It's like, well, because it depends on what Instagram is trying to focus on. And this is one of the things that like I was going to talk to you about. Like, I kind of want to move away more from the short form content, because one, I don't really like it as much. It's not my style. I like longer form content because I feel like you guys listening to this, like short form content, like fast stuff, I don't feel like you really get much out of it. It tickles you. Ooh, it's just like and that's why probably the really weird, entertaining stuff, like, ooh, something crazy happened, that stuff's probably better off for it, because you're not trying to learn anything. If you're trying to learn something, you need to sit your ass down, pay attention for a minute, and let's really dive into this, right? You're not going to learn physics by just like going through and having 16 different ideas float at you. You're going to learn by sitting down and really digesting that information, which I think is a little bit easier when you listen to a longer form podcast, longer video or whatever. It's like potato chips versus like a steak.
For sure.
It's like you can eat a whole bag of potato chips and you still don't feel satiated, where you eat a steak, you feel good. I watch a longer form video, I listen to an audiobook, I read a book, I feel good. If I sit there and scroll on Instagram, I'm like, I mean, that's my thing. So anyway, with that said, they change the algorithm a lot, where they'll basically essentially adjust. And this is probably worse on like Instagram than it is like YouTube, where like they'll adjust the algorithm, where all of a sudden, like now they're focused on this because they're trying to sell that. They're trying to compete with TikTok. Or when I remember the first time when they first started doing stories, they were competing with Snapchat.
Yeah.
Right. And so you would put a story up, bro, and then like it was new to everybody, and they were like putting them in front of everybody, and it was just instant. And it was like this back with Facebook back then. I remember when we had a Facebook page back in like 2010 to 2000, whatever it was, we had a Facebook page, and when we would post a thing on our Facebook page about the gym, everybody saw it. And then what happened when Facebook went public, all of a sudden, if you want to boost, you got to boost the page. If you want we'll let like a fraction of your people see it, but if you want everybody, you got to boost it. You got to see it. You got to actually pay advertising dollars, which I get, right? That's the model, but that's the game that they're playing.
Yeah.
And so it's like you get a fraction of your audience there. So they can change things up back and forth, and so sometimes it's like rolling the dice with what you're doing.
So how do you keep up with that stuff? Like, how do you figure out what the trend is?
I think the issue is that neither one of us are particularly built to follow the trends. I think both of us, and I could be completely wrong, I think both of our strengths are being ourselves, like being us, and like posting stuff that we want to post. And I think that's a weakness in a way for short form content, but I think it's a strength in a way for like our email list, YouTube, and like actually building connections with people, which in my opinion usually monetizes a little bit better. I don't know. You guys, you definitely know better than me, but if we post like some dumb trend that we saw on Instagram, someone's gonna be like, why is this, like, at least for me, I can't speak for Chewy, but like for me, if I post like whatever the trend is going on right now, someone's gonna be like, what does this have to do with wrestling right now? Like, this isn't a highlight video and this isn't a technique. Like, why? And I feel like it's the same for you, and I think it's our audiences are also older too. So I think that has, at least for mine on my Instagram, it's like 99% men, and it's like 25 to like 40 years old. Yeah. So I don't have like 16-year-olds following me.
Well, and I think too that the trend part is, again, it depends on what you're in this for. Like, I'm a coach. That's what I do day to day. And so the YouTube and everything else I do is an extension of that. If I wanted to create like an entertainment focused, YouTube, that would be fine, right? But like, I'm trying to coach people. I'm trying to make them better. So everything that I do has to go around that. Is this going to help serve you? Now, if there was some fun trend going around, okay, we'll jump in. We'll have some fun with it, right? Like we did I remember years ago, we did the Harlem Shake or whatever. We did that at the gym one time. We're just having fun. But like, I'm not going to go and do like I think about this all the time. I could easily get more traction by posting really like what we would say combative stuff that would like basically piss off half the people that follow me, but then like whatever, the stuff that's very divisive, which sort of goes against my like morals. Like, I don't like that stuff. Like, because you look on the internet, you look on everywhere else, and everybody's doing it, and I see it being done, and it's like, this is the cheap stuff. It's like basically where they'll just essentially attack one side of an argument, and they'll just sort of say this out just to like its attention. Or I could go and like just pick someone out who's in a bit bigger position than me and attack them and be like, so-and-so's wrong. Like, and just pick out a person's name, but that's not what I'm about. And so again, like to your credit, like we said, or like what you said, we're not going to follow the trends because we're coaches. We're not trying to like, hey, like follow on this, but at the same time, the benefit, the short-term loss from that is obviously you don't get as many views. The long-term thing is that you actually benefit people, so they stick around longer. Right. Like if you're getting people because of trends, it's right. You're going to be, unless you pivot at some point, it's going to be a short-lived thing. Whereas if you learn how to actually like give people something, help them out with something, then it's like they stick around for a little bit longer because they're like, oh, this guy actually helped me out with something. This guy gave me a perspective. This guy gave me a takedown and, or an idea or something like that. And this has really helped me out. I'm going to stick around because this person helped me out first, versus, wow, that was really entertaining or whatever. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
On to the next thing.
I think the thing that kind of you guys both hit on is Instagram is probably more for entertainment, and then the longer form, or you can still get some Instagram longer form content, but YouTube is more for education. Like if you're trying to learn something, and again, it can almost spark your interest. I think Instagram could, like some of these like shorter form, because like, you can see something, and then you can start, oh, I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole. Like that was an interesting leg lock entry or something. I'm gonna go and start researching that. So it can be, but it's more for like entertainment purposes.
I mean, you can have entertainment. I mean, Mr. Beast.
Yeah,
all entertainment.
Absolutely.
He's not teaching anything, right? All entertainment, right? So I mean, you can have it on YouTube. I just think my thing is like it's the actual platform itself. It's like when you're sitting down with like because I don't know if you guys, I'm creepy because it's like
that's good to know.
I'm very creepy. So I'm creepy like when I'm in like an airport, for instance, right?
Sure.
Like, and I do this all the time. I'll sit around and like I don't sit on my phone much, and so like I'm looking around and you just look at the world around you. And you're like, fuck. Everybody's heads are just down into their phone like all the time. I'm not saying I don't use my phone, but you know, I'll be in all sorts of situations and people are just stuck in their phone. And if you watch them, like you'll see Instagram and I'll just watch them. Like this, the other day I was at a coffee shop, person's in front of me, got their phone out and they're doing this, and you see them and they're going, they see something, they stop. They find something they like, back to scroll. Find something they like, back to scroll. Whereas if you think about YouTube, right, you clicked on the video, you're like, okay, let's see if they can give me something interesting. And you're more likely to stick, if it's giving you what you want, you're more likely to stick around for a little while. You know, you're like, okay, like this is what I want. I'll give you 2 minutes. You know, it starts off, I'll give you like about 15 seconds. All right, you got me in 50 seconds. I'll give you about another minute or two, right? Oh, okay, I'll give you another 4 minutes. Keep going, right? So whereas Instagram, you literally got like 3 seconds. And so that's why it's like, there was one guy that I was watching, and he just did his videos annoyed me. It was like he was trying to show like plant stuff, and I found out later on that he was just basically didn't know what the hell he's talking about, because like me and Jess been gardening, and so like he was like, hey guys, you can plant this spinach and you can grow your own spinach at your house, and it's like he's just doing all this. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And it's just to grab your attention, right? But and then I was like, I watched the video, I was like, well, you're that's not actually growing. That spinach is bolted, which means you can't eat it. It's gonna be bitter. Like that's not actually growing like the spinach you want to eat. Like you're lying to people.
Oh,
you're just showing some stuff because you want attention. Like whoa, like whatever. So yeah, but that's the Instagram thing. But I mean, even YouTube, you have to think about the audience, because again, it's changed. Like back in 2015 when I started going, right? I remember it took me, about a year, and I remember I built like a base of about 10,000 people, right? And I was like, wow. And I remember that was like the 10,000 mark was where things started to change, where all of a sudden I was going to tournaments and people were like, hey, Chewy, like they're whatever. You were there when that happened.
Yes.
But it was a different time, because I remember back then, like YouTube isn't like it is now. Like it's a different beast completely. It was, it's different than what it was in 2008 or 2006 when it started. And, by 2012 was different. By 2015, I was getting into it, and like being a YouTuber, air quotes, was kind of a thing. Like people started to know about it. But then like you get into 2019, 18, 20 territory, it's like they're doing news stories on 2020 about it, and it became like a mainstream thing. So everybody wants to be a YouTuber. Sure. And then you get this glut of it where everybody's putting out there. And a lot of people are just basing it off of, again, it goes back to what he was saying, like just short-term stuff, like this versus this, or like I'm going to talk trash about that person or that person's ideas, because it's a low-hanging fruit. It's really hard to take your own ideas and to blend them together and then present an idea, opposed to like simply what's going to get the most attention. How can I get eyeballs on me? That really isn't, it's not about you, because again, that's the problem. If you're doing videos like that, it's not even about the person watching it. You just want people to watch you, right? Like opposed to like, are you trying to help them, or are you just trying to get eyeballs on you because you think you're really cool and you're awesome? You're not actually trying to help someone. And, or, and then again, you can entertain people, and that can be a form of doing the same thing, but at least then you're just giving them entertainment, which could be interesting. But I think, anyway, just starting to
rant. So, Brandon, I'm
tangent over
like, we didn't start talking about social media, but I think there's a reason I was kind of asking about it. And I think
anti-social media,
anti-social media.
That's what I call it, anti-social media. This shit ain't social, bro. Like, have you ever seen the way people talk to each other in there? It's like,
it's really bad. Actually, it's really sad. Like I said, I hopefully one day when I'm older, I'm going to write a book called the Psychology of Instagram. That's going to be the name of the book. Eventually, once I get a little smarter from, Kentucky smarter, I'm gonna.
You got an education, bro.
I know.
You're college graduated.
You know what I'm saying? Like a degree in counseling. You know, I might know. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know anything. I got a degree, but I don't really know anything. Anyways, regardless, again on a tangent. I think like I agree with what you said. It's like it's antisocial. It's weird. The psychology of humans on social media is extremely interesting and sad. I find it sometimes because you're just like, man, like that's a real person you're speaking to.
Possibly, unless you're on like one of those places and they got all those bots.
The bots, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean,
but like in most cases, like when you have someone come up with a very authentic comment, to your video, yeah, you know,
like someone over there like stabbing you in the heart with something,
trying to.
Yeah. Obviously, also it's like learning how to handle it, right? And
that's the thing,
learning how to not take it too personally.
Yep.
Just because it's. Sorry,
here's a question for you, because that's something that's legit. Like, because you notice that, I mean, I'm sure you know this is when you first put out content and you don't have anybody listening or watching, you get no comments.
And if they are comments, it's like your friend or your mom putting like a heart or saying, I love you. Like,
so your following grew fast. Like my following has consistently been this like slow, just upward slog, except for like when we first started doing reels on Instagram, when we caught the tail end of that. Otherwise, it's been a very slow like increase, right? Was that something like, because you said your Instagram group, like, 50,000 people in like a couple months.
Yeah.
Did you all of a sudden out of nowhere just start getting blasted with like troll and negative comments out of nowhere? Was it like,
yeah, yeah, for sure. It was weird at first because I was like, man, I think I try to think about it in this way. Like when it first would happen, I'd be like, man, do I like suck? Like, is this the issue? Like, do I suck? Because like most of the bad comments would be like, you freaking suck, you're an NAIA wrestler, or you suck, you're like, you got submitted in 10 seconds at Blue Belt Worlds, or you freaking suck, this, that. They like name the reason. And then it's like I don't know, like being around you, for example, has helped me with it, because there's not that many people who can relate to that.
Yeah.
And learning how to, I'd say, express myself in ways like emails, or for me, like my daily emails, I write an email every day. It's like a diary for me. Like, oh, what do I want to talk about today? And like, obviously, like, how can I help you? Because my email is not just about wrestling. If I don't know if either one of you guys read my emails, but lots of times it is about wrestling or it is about jiu-jitsu, but also a lot of it's like, how can I connect like a daily struggle to like that normal life that like a jiu-jitsu or wrestling person would face. And sometimes like we've talked about this. Like if I get a really, really crappy email or a really, really crappy message or a comment, like, you suck, you did this, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, my email would be like 5 reasons you shouldn't learn from a crappy NAIA wrestler. And then it'll be like that, reverse psychology, like the funny thing. And then that ends up getting a couple sales. And then I feel so much better after the email. So I think I got lucky because I had Chewy as like a mentor, to where I was able to take negativity, and I really think now I'm able to turn it into pretty positive things. And for the most part, if it's like just a stupid lame troll, like I just ignore it. But if it's like a really, really good one, I take screenshots of everything now, and I have a Dropbox file where I keep all of my trolls, so that like
taught you well.
Yeah. Where like if I'm just like, dang it, I don't know what to write for an email today, I'll be like, oh, this is always gonna be like a good this is gonna be a good email. So that's the way I handle it, of course.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So you're using that negative, like, and that's hard. Like I think for me, like I'll get sometimes some.
Yeah.
There was this comment I got one of my videos that said like, I don't even know what they said, but basically they said, it was on Reddit. I'll still post shit on Reddit, which is stupid. I posted a video on Reddit and the guy goes, your titles to your videos are usually pretty bland, but even this clickbaity shit is like beneath you or something. So he said, first of all, my titles suck. And then I'm clickbaity. And I literally quoted the question that I got. That's what I responded. It's just, it's just some of the shit. And it's just like, I'm like, damn. But then I'm like, who cares? Like sometimes like getting, like you said, when you first start, you get no attention. And even getting some negative attention gives you some ammo, at least a little something. Either it can motivate you, it can discourage you, but you have to realize
if you're not getting haters, something's wrong.
Right. Yeah.
That's just that's the simple thing. I mean, think
about a great way to look at it.
Like, because if you aren't, if you're so if everybody's completely apathetic to you, nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Right.
That's a problem, right? Especially if you're trying to put something out to actually like affect people. you know, like for instance, earlier I got this one dude was on my YouTube today. I'm gonna go through and read his comments and see if I can get some golden nuggets to share with my email list, my Chew Crew list. And you know, I could tell that it was just him talking, you know, shit about me.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, this guy's nuts. And he left like 5 or 6 comments.
Oh, wow.
In the span of like an hour. I'm like, so this guy was watching all of my, watching my videos over and over again and commenting on each one, just whatever, which I'm like, okay, man, just keep clicking. But then at the same time, I could scroll and I could see a message from someone say, hey, bro, this really helped me out. Like this idea, man, this helped me out a bunch. Or man, I used this technique last night during my rolling. The problem is with us as humans is we're so wired to look towards the negative stuff that you got to be careful because it's like when you start getting into this stuff, you have to like learn to detach from it, because there are a lot of times you'll be surrounded by good positive stuff. Then one negative comment, if it hits just right, if you're not ready for it in the beginning, like it can send you in it can give you a bad day. You can be like, because like you said, we're all like, every one of us has some insecurities about where we are with all of our stuff, right?
100%.
So if someone says, man, you suck, you got submitted about Blue Belt World, whatever, and then you're thinking to myself, do I suck? You know,
that's it.
But then you got to remember, then you got to go back and like, well, wait a second, I beat everybody else and I just caught it happens in jiu-jitsu and
it does.
I did this, I've done this. No, I don't friggin' suck. But it's just, that's one guy on the internet. But it plays on all of us who, like, again, we all have insecurities, right? Sure. And so again, it's one of those things that where it takes a while to deal with, to be able to like take the battering of negative comments from people. And then after a while, like now, like when I see them, I'm like, yeah, thank you. Let's play around with this one. This will be fun to laugh at.
They're so good. I was just talking to Katie, my girlfriend, about this actually on the way here. What we were talking about at Nogi Worlds. This is when I was like, oh crap, this is cool. So I started to have my first Chewy. Like this was my first event that I went to, and I was like, oh, I get it. Like I get it. So there was like there were a handful of really good encounters I had, but there was one that like really got me. There was 2 that were just really, really good. One guy's wife had just like passed away from like breast cancer. And he's been following me since like the beginning, and like he came up to me and talked to me. I was just like, man, I've been watching your videos for like 2 years. I have like all your instructionals. You're the man. I'm so grateful.
That's awesome.
And this was like after I had lost and stuff, and he was just super happy. And then there was this bigger guy who came up, and he was like, man, I love your takedowns for older grapplers instructional. It was the perfect one for me. And then there was a random chick. She was like my age. She came up and she was like, man, I always wanted to learn. We don't have wrestling in my jiu-jitsu gym. It's super awesome. I have a ton of your instructionals, and this is super cool. I love what you do. And it's like those little moments, and I've wrote about all these on my emails. Like those little moments, like those 3 moments would kill 10,000 bad comments. For sure. So it's
as long as you know how to look at it.
As long as you know how to look at it. Yeah, it's definitely you have to play with perspective a little bit. I feel bad for whoever's listening to this, because they're like, oh, this freaking social media stuff.
I know.
Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's just we got on the subject because again, like Brandon and I work together, so obviously he helps me out with some of my social media stuff, and then when he was getting started, I was helping out with some of his stuff.
Well, I think it kind of what happened was that once it kind of started to take off, because you were actually going a different direction. I don't know if you were on the podcast at the time or this was after, when you actually went back and you're going to continue your education. Then things started to change for you, and you realized you could maybe kind of take advantage of kind of the motivation or kind of like the steam you were getting, and actually go and try to, you know, train full time and maybe even, you know, go all in on what you're wanting to do, kind of your dream essentially. So how did that like process kind of happen?
Yeah, so I left Derby City because I was struggling a little bit financially, and my roommate was leaving. So I had a roommate, and he was leaving because he was getting married, and I was basically put in this position where like I was already doing like 20 private lessons a week.
Before that, he was working at a coffee shop.
Before that, I was working at a coffee shop,
which I always thought was funny because like for anybody that like to give you a picture, like I would go to the coffee shop that he worked at, and like everyone else, maybe except for the exception of one guy who he actually used to train at the gym too, who he didn't belong either. But like the everybody that was there was very much like
what you'd expect
working at a coffee shop, right? Just not super jacked, a bit like, you know, they're probably I don't know, like you would probably, I would imagine, and I don't mean to say this to mean or whatever, they probably lean a little bit more on the liberal side, right?
For sure,
like,
yeah.
Like when he would talk about like his, you got your Jocko stuff.
Yeah.
They're like, that's toxic, right? This Jocko fella's toxic.
No,
you
know? Come
on.
Yeah.
So anyway, so he was working at the coffee shop, like trying to make the ends meet, but I always thought that was funny because it was like, you just didn't fit in that setting.
Yeah, I only lasted like 4 months there, and then I quit the coffee shop just for exactly what he said. I didn't fit in, and then I went full on private lessons and stuff because my Instagram and stuff was still growing. It blown up a little bit, but not enough to where like I was making any money, and I hadn't learned how to.
You didn't have anything set up to even do that.
I didn't have anything set up, and my roommate was leaving, and I was literally put in this situation where it was like, I have nowhere to go in Louisville. Like, of course, like I'm not saying like I had nowhere to go as in like I couldn't have asked someone to hang out. I mean, Tom would have helped me. I feel like Chewy would have helped me. My mom would have helped me. Like, but the thing was like, it was we all have an ego, right? It's Chewy's favorite saying. But my ego was really fighting against the idea of like having someone help me. So I kind of got into like this crisis where I was like, okay, there's this job opportunity back at my old college. I can become a college wrestling coach. Like I can work my way up to that. And I can do school at the same time, and I can stop doing all these crazy privates. So
because you could get a master's degree.
That's it. Yeah.
Like when you first went, I didn't realize it was a money thing. I thought it was more of a master's degree thing because you were essentially going to get paid you were going to get paid a little bit and get a master's degree for free.
Yeah, it was both. So I was getting paid like I wasn't getting paid much. It was like $1,000 a month, but I got like room and board and food all for free. So I got my master's, I got paid. And I got to work with the wrestling team and still do like a couple privates on the side if I wanted to, which I did. But the big thing was that like at the time, Louisville was way too expensive for me. So I kind of was in this situation where I was like, I can stay in Louisville and beg for help, which I really did not want to do. And to this day, I still would never do. It's just how I am. Or I could, go here, see if I like this. Because I wasn't even all in on it. I was just like, this is cool. I want to try this. Like, maybe this would be great. I went. I loved my boss. Super amazing guy. I loved the people I trained jiu-jitsu with there. Super great people. I love the wrestling team. Everything is great. I just wasn't happy. I got really, I felt very isolated there. And I felt like one of those things where, like, you could see your life passing by. And I wasn't even there that long. Like, it was like 6 months. And I was just like, this is bad. Like, I want to train jiu-jitsu 6 days a week. I want to be lifting. I want to be traveling. I want to be training with tough people. And I want to be in a environment where like I can say, oh, like if I go compete, I put myself in the best position to not make myself look, bad. Obviously, I know I could still lose, but like that whole situation was like, the grass was not greener on the other side, essentially. And then Chewy and my girlfriend helped me figure out the Kajabi stuff, and then I released Dominate the Hand Fight, and that went crazy. Like, even today, it still goes pretty crazy. And that's when I was just like, whoa, this instructional thing is pretty nice. And I loved teaching. And so it was weird because I didn't really know how to do instructionals. Like, I was thinking about doing BJJ Fanatics or Wrestling Fanatics, and those are amazing people at both of those companies. I guess it's one company. But again, that wasn't the direction that I wanted to go. But once Chewy and Katie helped me figure out my thing and I got a little momentum going, it became like quite obvious that like I was making quite a bit of money at the time, and I'm not saying I was rich or anything, but I was making enough money that I did not need to stay there, and that the future of getting that master's degree didn't make any sense. Like, the degree was going to be in business. It's like, I don't need a master's degree in business if I have my own business. I should I have a great mentor. And I was just like, it's probably better for me. I've like coming back to Louisville. Obviously I'm about to leave, but like the time that I decided to come back to Louisville was great because I get to get mentored. I also got to do lots of jiu-jitsu, and I got lots of opportunities to compete and travel and train, which I wouldn't have had if I stayed where I was. So it was a hard decision to leave because I felt really bad because my boss, Mike, the sweetest and most amazing guy in the world. Like, it makes me feel so sad. But he understood. He got it. I really felt bad because I let him down a little bit because I really thought I was all into it. And then I just found out that like, no, like this is what I needed. And I'm super happy I came back. So I came back and yeah,
Yes, that's kind of one of the reasons we wanted to have you on in person, because you're getting ready to leave in a couple of weeks. In January, you're going to be heading up to Canada,
Montreal,
which is cool. Do you think you fit in there
Cold.
in Canada? Do you think you fit in out there?
Yes,
you do.
I do. Montreal is it's time. I've been back here for 2 years almost, and I've been visiting Montreal back and forth.
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure but I'm like barely ever here anymore, right? And so not only has the expenses added up, but like with life, it just kind of makes sense that like I'm an adult and I kind of need to go do adult things. And
when your lady's there,
and well, that's what I mean. Right?
It's like
and my lady's there, right? And it's like, so it's not because someone asked me, they're like, is it because of jiu-jitsu? I was just like, there's no, not at all.
It's part of it, but it's not the main reason.
It's no, yeah, it's like there's save for like a couple of really high level gyms in the US, I've never had better training at a gym in Montreal than I've had at Derby City. And I do love Montreal. I do. And I love the jiu-jitsu there because there's lots of really good guys in multiple different gyms.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like, it's just not the same. For one, at Derby City, it's like family, right? So like I can go with almost anyone and like they trust me to roll. All right. And funny enough, like there's not very many big people in Montreal. So, and the big people that are in Montreal, I tend to compete with. So there tends to be this weird dynamic when I go there. So, but when I'm home, it's like I get to go with Chewy, I get to go with Mark, I get to go with Rich, I get to go with the other big guys. And then even the guys who aren't big, I get to roll with. Now, when I'm in Montreal, or not just Montreal, but like if I go to a new gym and name the city, I have to do this thing where I have to, any big guy knows this, like you have to take your time to build relationships. So like the best training isn't even possible until you've been there for like 6 months and you've built relationships, because they see you as a big guy and they're like, dang, this guy's gonna hurt me. Like this guy's, and then even worse for me in my case is you can look my name up and you're like, oh, he's a wrestler. And every jiu-jitsu person has these weird misconceptions. Maybe they're not misconceptions, but they have like this idea of wrestlers or former wrestlers as like dangerous people. So
they can be. And the thing is with you, like if you go in there, if you were to go in and roll with someone first time and you actually went like, your full speed, they're going to roll with you once and it could be a great roll. They're probably never going to want to roll with you again because that's a hard pace.
Yeah.
That's like it's a really tough pace to keep up with. Whereas like you said, if you guys build somewhat of a relationship and then you start rolling harder and harder and harder, you can go harder. You can realize, oh, we're cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's really with most people, but it's especially important with bigger guys because like you said, big wrestlers going into a gym typically are one of those things where people I bet if you even look at a heel hook, someone's probably going to start tapping because they don't trust you. Now, if they actually roll with you, you're very confident, you're very slow and controlled with heel hooks. But if you get 240-pound wrestler who's grabbed the leg, like that's a scary thing. But if you don't know that the person is controlled and chill,
I'll preface this with like I definitely understand it.
Sure,
like I definitely understand it. It's just one of those things that's like I understand why it is. It just sucks that it is why it is. But it's fine. It's fine. And
you're eventually gonna like when you get like a little like more and more into it, you're eventually gonna have like some like stud like 240-pound like college wrestler come in when you're well deep into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And they're gonna come in and they're just gonna be like full of piss and vinegar and they're gonna just be going wild and you're like, oh, that's what all those dudes are talking about.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put him on his neck. Yeah,
well,
I'm just kidding.
And you might, but to be one of those things where you're like, you're in there and you're like, okay, I'm here to train a little bit today. Maybe it's gonna be one of those down days.
I've had that. I've had that with MMA fighters. I'm not gonna name any names or name any gyms, but when I've traveled and gone to certain gyms that are MMA gyms,
sure.
I've like rolled with guys and they are like, I don't like to use the word, but like they're spazzy as crap, man. And so like I've had to like put it on a couple guys, like 170, 180-pound guys who like they're like trying to kill me, dude. Like when they get like a weird like a choke, it's like 100% like what's this called again? Like they're your like windpipe, they're like trying to smash your trachea, and you're just like, bro, like I could kill you. Like why are you? So I have had that experience, not with wrestlers in particular, more so when I've traveled to do certain things. I've had that experience with more like MMA fighter type guys. I don't know what either one of your experiences are with like, like the young, like fresh MMA fighter guys.
Oh yeah, bro, they're wild.
They're wild.
You got to think and I understand it to a degree, right? So for instance, like when like say the first time we rolled together, and like I'm basically in the washing machine getting around hanging on to, right? Like your body is wired for the intensity and the urgency needed for wrestling.
Guys, he's lying. I didn't throw him around. You can watch the video. He was just butterfly sweeping me back and forth.
I would butterfly sweep, but then I remember like I would get to your back and then you would chuck me off. Yeah. And then there'd be people in the comments go, "Why didn't you do this?" I'm like, "You tried doing to him."
I remember seeing a comment because I went back and looked at it like a year ago, and it was funny. Somebody was like, "Why are you letting him hand fight you so hard? Yeah. Why are you just letting him do what he wants?" And you're just like, bro, like.
Yeah, this is a battle, man. He's a good grappler.
This is gonna be tough.
He doesn't know how to I can sweep him, but like trying to keep him on his shoulders and getting him off balance. Right? That's tough.
Dude, sometimes this might sound ridiculous. Sometimes I wish I still had some of that because like actually a lot of that's gone. Yeah. And it's weird because a lot of it used to be like instinct. Yes. Like I don't know how to explain it. It's like there was this like bounciness that I remember, right? Whereas like now I genuinely don't have it as much
because you don't need it.
Because I don't need it. But man, sometimes in certain rule sets, you need it.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is like, so like when you deal with MMA fighters, you deal with wrestlers, they're coming from an environment where like certain things are just like you can't let this happen. So for instance, like getting put on your back, like in wrestling, it's like everything that you do in wrestling is we don't ever do this.
Never.
It is like it's like you don't ever do this. There's never an option to do it. And so it becomes that thing where you have that urgency around it. MMA fighting is one of those things too, where everything that is done in an MMA fight, grappling wise, has to be done with a level of urgency. Yeah. You don't have that sort of methodical ability like in jiu-jitsu where I can slowly work this person down because they'll stand me up if I'm not doing action. So for instance, if we get around to the back, there's not okay, I'm going to take the back and I'm going to slowly set this up. And in like about 1.5 to 2 minutes, I'm going to choke this guy. It's like, no. We got to rip this stuff.
We gotta go.
And then if like they're escaping, I mean, if you holding on to like an MMA fighter, it's like, like they're just like going like, Jesus Christ,
veins popping out of the neck.
Yeah, and it took me a while to understand that because I see you guys do it, and it's just the way that their nervous system essentially is being wired through that particular activity. There's so much urgency because of the punches and the strikes. Yeah. And in wrestling, right, there's so much urgency because of
just the culture,
and because of understanding that, like, if I get put on my back in here, that's the end of the game. That's over. We're done. So like for instance, like putting you on your back, it's like, and it's a great thing for anybody that, like, if you have a wrestler in your gym, it's such a good thing to get them while they still have that bounciness.
Yeah.
Because if you learn how to put a wrestler who still has that bounciness in them, that ability, that desire to not want to go to their back, if you can put them on their back and pin them, you can put any jiu-jitsu guy on their back.
For sure.
Because I remember like we had a guy, Tim, that used to train with us, who would literally he was so frustrating because every time you'd put him on his back, he would stand up and run away. And so you really had to be really
that'd be so annoying.
It was. And you're like, this is so, like, instead of engaging in the jiu-jitsu way, he would just get up and get away from you. And you're like, this is so, but I remember being frustrated, but then I was like, oh, I had to just come up with him. I had to switch from like sweeping and just coming up and expecting him to drop to like, I've got to wrestle him to the ground.
Yeah. And
it was so useful because then, like, on few occasions, like for the most part, I can always get a guy down once I'm initiating that sweep. For the most part, and in jiu-jitsu guys, it's like super easy because they don't fight the same. So like it's like you train your sweeps and your finishes to your sweeps way more than what they need to be. So for the most part, unless that guy's like some stud, like, champion wrestler, I mean, for the most part, they're going to go down.
Yeah, 100%.
So
did y'all hear? Daniel Cormier was on Joe Rogan's podcast and he was talking about like he never sleeps on his back.
Yeah,
he never sleeps on his back, and like
to this day,
that's because he got sleep apnea.
No.
Oh God.
He says like whenever any of his his students are like watching technique, he never lets them like lay down or sit on their. He's like
wrestling,
crazy about that.
Yeah, I mean
that's how it is.
I remember I'm sure it was the same for you guys. Like I remember when we were in high school, when I wrestled, like we were never allowed to lay on our backs.
It's a mental thing too. Like
you could not lay on your side. You'd had to be up. You could be laying on your stomach, but you could never be on your back.
Yeah. Same. It's literally same exact thing.
I mean, I think you just like build that into your
mentality. I wonder if I wonder if he really doesn't sleep on his back.
I don't think he does. I think he was serious.
I wonder if there's some sort of like mental thing where as soon as he touches his back, he wakes up in the middle of the night, because you're really toss and turn and then like.
I mean, didn't you feel super? I mean, because you were a wrestler too. Like I remember how uncomfortable I felt originally, because you're just like I think the feeling was like drowning was like the feeling I felt when I first started to like do jiu-jitsu off my back.
Yeah.
Which is now it doesn't, but like you have to like kind of, I mean, I know you're old, so it's a long time ago. And so it must be hard to remember.
I remember it. Yeah. I remember I would basically, if you got me on my back, I would basically start to push and shove and spaz out.
Yeah, that's it.
And then I would get really tired. Yeah. Someone would get on top. And I had like claustrophobia to some degree. And so like I would just start breathing really heavy and I would tap out a lot.
That was it. It was claustrophobia.
I used to tap out a lot to pressure.
Rich did that to me. The first time we rolled, I remember he tapped me like 5 times with just pressure. Yeah. And I was just like,
what happened? Like what was going through your head with
it? Would just be like, it was when I first started to try to pull guard.
And you didn't know how to like settle down.
I didn't know how to settle. And then he would just pass my guard and get into mount. And then like from there, it wasn't mount. It was side control. It was side control. He would just hold me in side control and just put all his weight on me. Yeah. And I would tap from his side control.
Interesting.
And because it's like he said, it's like, you're like, and then you're like, and then there's this blanket on you and you're drowning.
You don't have the ability to stay like calm and relaxed in that position because there's no time to in wrestling. If you stay calm and relaxed, you lose.
Exactly. So yes, exactly. So for me, I had to make it like a conscious habit of doing lots of situational rounds and now it's like I'm perfectly fine. Like I can get submitted from any position, like just like anyone else, but like for the most part, I feel pretty safe in basically every pinning position. Like, I feel like I have the ability to get out of most spots where I'm pinned to the ground. Whereas before, I had no idea.
Yeah, well, that's something I'm talking about in the video that was going up today on YouTube. It's like talking about the idea of like being very intentional with your rolling, especially if you're working on weird areas that you struggle with. Like you're saying, you had to be very intentional about settle down. Let's try to do this the right way. Don't just freak out and spaz out and resist that. If there's an area of the game that you start to freak out about, like leg locks were one for a while for me. When I first started diving into them, I had to have that intention of like, just settle down, just relax a little bit. Let's think about what's going on here. And then like do a lot of situational work from those positions so that it became more comfortable, right? I mean, that's jiu-jitsu in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
Let's take uncomfortable situations and make them comfortable by being there a lot to the point where we're literally having some 280-pound dude smash our faces, chest hairs, friggin' flossing our teeth. And we're just like, we're cool. We're relaxing.
Yeah,
we're breathing. We're good. We're waiting for our opportunity for the right moment to move,
What was the hardest thing for you to like, as far as your transition into, now being a full-time jiu-jitsu athlete, essentially, what was the hardest transition or hardest thing to get used to? Was it just being on your back, or was it like, and maybe even how did you kind of cultivate that as well? Like what's a good way, maybe advice for someone coming into jiu-jitsu from wrestling, like to start to play the game a little bit better? Cause that makes you a better training partner and it's going to grow your game anyways. But we've had some wrestlers coming in. Some white belt Zane is a great example.
Yeah.
He'd come to 6 a.m. classes and dude, he's starting to play off his back and he's doing all that. He's really like taken to it.
Yeah.
And I think he's a really good student. I feel like that's part of it. You gotta be willing to learn. But was there something for you kind of learning that, having that process take over?
I'm sure I've said it before, but yeah, I mean, it was just, in wrestling, which most people don't understand, there's 3 positions: top, bottom, neutral. Okay, so neutral is what everyone thinks when they think of wrestling, right? Takedowns. But like, in order to get good at wrestling, at least folk style wrestling, you also need to get good at top and bottom. So how do you get good at top and bottom? Well, some practices during the week you would only do top. Some practices during the week you'd only do bottom. So for me, it was like, it's the holistic approach, right? Wrestling was not just takedowns. So in jiu-jitsu, it's like that same idea. Like during the week, I'll be like, okay, if I'm gonna roll Chewy for me is my hardest roll at the gym. So it's like, okay, with Chewy, I need to work on, I'm going to do a little bit more A game stuff. So like, hey, I'm going to work on this loose passing. Now, if I go with like a blue belt or purple belt at the gym, who maybe is a little bit smaller, I'm just gonna be like, I'm just gonna let myself get past, and I'm gonna let this guy get me into side control, and I'm gonna work on getting out from side control, or I'm gonna get into closed guard, and I'm not gonna do any leg locks. I'm gonna try to do triangles, etc. So I just take like that same approach that I took with like getting better at wrestling, because when I was in college, the problem I had my freshman year was I was really bad on bottom, and I think that's one of the things that led me to getting fourth. And so I worked that whole summer on. Obviously, I still did takedowns and stuff, but like the majority of the summer was getting better off bottom. So I just take that same thing. Like I'm still really weak in most areas in jiu-jitsu relative to the guys that I want to beat. So I just every day go into practice with like the goal that like, oh, this is a spot that I find that I could be a little bit better in. And I don't just like hit on it for a week. It'll be like a month at a time that like I'm doing something. Like last month I did mount escapes, and now I feel like I'm super hard to hold them out. Right now, like I said, I'm working on like loose passing stuff. I'm still very bad at it, but I'm getting a little bit better. So I think it's like this taking a holistic approach and not just being like I need to work on just like my strong area, I guess.
So in jiu-jitsu right now, there's kind of a big argument that's going around where like it seems like, everybody changes things every so often. But there's an argument where I've been asked this question where people say that, drilling it's pointless. Like drilling a technique is pointless, it's not useful. And that the way to go is like these different games, task-based games. With your training with wrestling, jiu-jitsu, whatever, what is the importance of drilling? Do you think drilling is useful? How do you feel about that?
For me, like if you see me do a seminar, most of my seminar stuff's on YouTube or like in my instructionals and stuff, but I do a lot of games. The issue with only doing games is like sometimes you don't want resistance, right? Like if I'm doing a blast double, like if the goal is to learn how to do a blast double, if the whole time, let's say we play a game, because this man B, your whole job is just to keep both your hands down, keep your butt back, and keep your head up. If me and man B are like the same size, I'm never gonna blast double him. So it's like if I'm doing that every day, well, how am I supposed to? You have to be successful with this stuff. Also, another thing is like, let's say you do blast through that guy. Well, now most likely your mechanics might be bad, right? Well, okay, now you go into competition, maybe like in your practice room, because this is like relatively true for most places. There's usually one or two guys who are super athletic in a room, and the rest of the guys are much less athletic. If I tell the super athletic guys that all they have to do is just, we're going to play this game where you get the blast double. Yeah, they're going to score the blast doubles, but now you switch the roles. Now the unathletic person is at this big disadvantage, right? So there is something important to me about doing quote unquote static drilling, which isn't static at all. Actually, I think that's a incorrect way to put it, but that's what people will call it, where I do a move, push, pull, fake, shot, boom. All right, now the other guy goes push, pull, fake, shot, where like we're giving reactions, but we're not giving resistance. The problem with just playing games is games imply competitiveness. Depending on, maybe if you're in a room where people don't care to lose or give up position, maybe that works. I still don't think so, but like maybe it's good to just be able to drill so that you can learn the motions of like techniques. Again, I'm not an expert in jiu-jitsu, don't know anything about it. But for wrestling, for sure, you cannot do a game approach. You cannot only do a game approach. For a warm-up, great. For a cool down, great. For live, great. Games are great for all of those things. For learning, and mastering a technique, I didn't learn my ankle picks playing games, and I didn't learn duck unders playing games. I learned it through constant drilling, and drilling it while I was fresh, drilling while I was tired, drilling it after live rounds, drill, and now I can hit my duck under on like the best guys in the world. I believe, you know what I mean? My ankle pick, same if we have wrestling shoes on. So no, I personally don't think a purely game-based approach is good, but I'm also saying that I think that there is room to do it, because play is great and play is fun, but I don't think play can be the totality of the way you learn. This is just my opinion.
So, Brandon, so let's talk a little bit about kind of prepping for tournaments. You've had some, ADCC, you've done the trials, East Coast trials did really well.
Yeah.
What's your kind of process for maybe even like training or preparing for different rule sets, and also maybe kind of what you've learned from the ADCC that where you, I mean, what you won like 4 matches or something? You did fantastic.
Made it to the quarters.
Yeah, and sick takedowns against big dudes. I mean, you did great. So what's kind of the process maybe when you're looking at a certain rule set, preparing for that specifically?
So I try to, like I said, every class that I go into and every time like I roll, I try to like keep the rule set in mind. So like Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do like a wrestling for jiu-jitsu class. It's not like a basic wrestling class. The big focus is ADCC rules. So like right now on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we'll like start with something simple. Right now we're focusing on double legs. All right, we do a double leg. Just kind of just stuff that we were doing at Essential. All right, we do a double leg. Guy gets uni Kimura. All right, boom. We're working through how to defend that or counter that. Or we do a double leg. We take the guy down. He goes up to turtle. Okay, let's get our back take from turtle. Just again, because of ADCC, you have to. We do a double leg. We get the guy's butt flat on the mat. Okay, once my partner's butt hits the mat, it's a live go from right there. We have to pin our partner's tailbone to the mat for 3 seconds, 3 long seconds. Okay, that's how it goes. So more or less, I usually train for ADCC rule set. I don't necessarily prefer the other rule sets personally. I don't think they're bad. I just genuinely I enjoy ADCC rule set. I like enjoy the challenge of it. And so when I train, especially like my wrestling classes, I like to put a really heavy focus on the points and scoring. And I feel like that helped me a lot in prep for ADCC trials this year. Obviously, I didn't do the greatest, but I was able to do something that I couldn't do last time, and that was actually secure hooks on people and actually pin people after I get takedowns. Not every time, but most of the time. And I think that was because I put a huge focus on watching the rules meeting. I watch the rules meeting like daily. The ADCC has on YouTube where it explains like the rules heavily. And I watched a lot of ADCC matches. And then, like I said, when I went to like my more individual practices, like the wrestling practices, I would focus on drills that follow that rule set and doing situational roles that follow that rule set. And then like the other big thing is like I'm most confident when I'm in really good shape. Some people don't value cardio in jiu-jitsu, and I'm not saying they're wrong because they're a lot better than me. Like those guys are a lot better than me.
Who doesn't?
I'm not gonna say names, but like some people don't think that doing cardio off of the mat is a important thing for jiu-jitsu.
If you're a competitor,
yeah, exactly, right.
If you're a hobbyist, yeah, you're fine. But like, if you're a competitor,
but for me, the big thing was coach like John Marsh, JT's strength and conditioning coach and wrestling coach. He put me through like 3 days a week. I would just go do the strength and conditioning with him, and he killed me. It was the same stuff JT was doing. Yeah. And I did that for a couple of weeks, and I was already doing my own stuff before I went up to New York to train. But like when I went there, I was like, JT, I want to be ready. Like I'm probably not gonna learn much technique in 2 weeks. That wasn't the point of going. The point was I'm gonna drill hard as crap. I'm gonna get smooth at my passing. I'm gonna make sure that I'm in really, really good shape. And when I did that, I felt like for the first time in any of my jiu-jitsu competitions that I was like really back to where it was the first time in like the almost like 3 years of doing jiu-jitsu that I was just like, I feel how I felt going into like a national wrestling tournament, like where I was just like, my conditioning was super good. I never peaked before for a jiu-jitsu tournament. And I took the mindset that I used to have for wrestling and really put it into this trials. And obviously it didn't completely show. No, it didn't. But
I mean, but it's an experience thing.
It for sure. And I'm not mad about it. Like, sure. I want to say this like as a sad thing. Like it didn't completely show as
you looked great up until then.
Yeah.
I mean,
fantastic.
But I also felt great. And that was the first time that I felt great. Like I remember going to Nogi Worlds and I felt like crap. And obviously there's multiple variables to that besides just the training, of course. But you know, my diet wasn't on point. I wasn't lifting at the time, et cetera, et cetera. This was
a lot of privates.
Teaching a lot of privates. Now I'm taught 0 privates going into trials. I've been lifting for like 12 weeks. I've been doing conditioning like 3 times a week. I was being put through like wrestling practices and jiu-jitsu practices that felt like intense college wrestling practices when I was up at Essential. When I came to Derby City, I got Shark Tanked right before. I was in like by DT and Bobby. So it was like I got put in so many like uncomfortable but safe positions that like my conditioning was so good. I felt so confident in most bad spots. Funny enough, I got caught in a spot I was not comfortable in. But I'm not upset about that loss because I feel that again, that was a lack of experience. That wasn't a lack of work. Whereas like at points, I felt like I've lost matches, or I've even had tough matches because I didn't do the right things in preparation. And I thought that like my athletic ability was going to be good enough for me when I first started doing jiu-jitsu. And I was like, no, like I need to treat this like I treated winning a college wrestling national title. And this time, man, I really did. Like I really went all in, and I was like, regardless of like the results, I was super proud of myself because I was just like, man, I trained hard. I ate right. I didn't drink beer. I didn't do. I lifted. I did everything. Everything JT told me. Everything Coach John told me. I did it. I hated it, but I got through it. And when I got to the tournament, I felt just amazing. No injuries. No nothing crazy. And so yeah, preparation was hard. And long story short, it was just like try to resemble the type of work that I put in when I was successful in college.
Did you even know the Gogo Plata existed before? I was gonna say
I
I don't think you did.
Yeah. I knew what the Oma Plata was, right? But I never knew like you would
the foot across.
Like
well,
you put the foot across
his weight. I mean, like how many heavyweights do you know? Like say, you know what this like you guys listening, right? Like how many 240, 50-pound dudes do you know go into your gym and immediately pull guard, go to rubber guard, and go for Gogo Plata? Probably zero. It's not very common at a heavyweight. And again, we're typically going to prepare for what is going to be most common for us. So at the heavyweight divisions, typically what's the most common, aside from a few guys, is like dudes are going to battle to get on top. I mean, that's the biggest I mean, that's like one of your top 3 things that you've got to be concerned about as a heavyweight. You know, like really bendy, flexible people. Okay, we're going to get down into the lower weights, right? Like with like a little dude, you're going to be worried about some dude inverting on you. Some guy pulling guard with a flexible, like that's going to be a thing. So you're not going to be prepared for it. So it's just one of those inexperienced
something
things
you hadn't seen.
Yeah. And that's why I'm trying to compete more too. Like I told you, I'm about to compete like 3 times back to back. And I might actually add in another competition in between. I think this year I just need to put myself in more positions to lose and to put myself in positions where I'm like, I need to train there more, or I don't have an answer there, because like I find one of the bad parts, I wouldn't say it's it's just it just happened because I've been so busy with my business stuff and traveling. I didn't compete as much as I probably should have. And I think that every time you compete, win or lose, but especially if you lose, you get like a little bit of like valuable experience, and like and I don't mean it in like a corny way, like you lose or you learn. But it is real, like that is real. It's like, oh, like I literally did not know what that position was. And now that I know what the position is, it's a ridiculous position. And I don't think I'll get submitted there again because I put a lot of work in not getting submitted there. So my goal is before the next trials, compete to 2 or 3 more times before trials. And if I lose again, put more reps into that little area that I lost in and just keep closing up holes. Because I found that like I've compared to the first time we went to trials, like when we first went to trials, I was just like, there's no way I'm going to like win this. And this time I was just like, okay, like I think I can actually do pretty dang good in this one.
Well, the first time, like, you know, this is for a big tournament like that, you know, like a lot of times it's just getting your experience because you've been training jiu-jitsu for really less than a full year consistently. And it was just about getting out there and experiencing it so you can see what you're getting into. So now you can have the drive to say, okay, this is what I got to get ready for. You know, but a lot of times, you know, this is why like a lot of times when people are getting new or when they're brand new to competing, I always tell them like, just get in there and do it, because you have no idea what you're doing, what you're getting ready for until you compete. Then when you compete, regardless of how it goes, you'll then have a good, clear idea as to this is what I'm getting ready for, because the intensity of an actual tough match. And again, there's variables to that, right? Like, you know, maybe in the beginning, a regional tournament feels tough. Then that becomes very easy. And then now like going to say like a higher level tournament feels tough, but there's a different intensity in those. And if you're not used to doing that, it's hard to explain. You know, there's a lot of things in life that are very much like you just got to experience it. If you want to compete at a higher level, you have to go experience that level, and just you got to see what that feels like so that you can know like this is what I've got to be able to match.
Yeah, for sure. It's so crazy because it's like it's so hard to like it's so hard to define or to pick one word to use when you talk about like what makes it more difficult, because like I agree that it's not necessarily intensity, like physical intensity. Sometimes it is, but I feel like if it's in the I feel like if I get into a scrap, I'm gonna win. Like if it's like that other guy wants to just scrap, like we're just gonna fight, I think I'm gonna win. But 9 out of 10 times I feel like that's true. But what's so difficult is like when you go against guys who have really good nuanced technical jiu-jitsu,
and they fight for that technique.
And they fight for that
right.
technique.
That's what when I say intensity, I don't necessarily mean some guy that's ready to just like club and
Yeah.
bash. Whatever. I'm talking about
persistent.
Yeah, some dude pulls guard and he's attacking he's attacking like a leg entry, like you attack a double leg.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that guy's coming after you with intensity for that technique. And they have that technical aggression that again only comes from guys being at a high level where, you know, sometimes if you get someone that's at a little bit lower level, they attack the technique, you shut them down, and they kind of just wilt. They kind of stop doing it. Where you get a guy who's a gamer, you shut them down, they regroup, they come back at you, and you guys are doing this back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. And I think another big thing that I learned is we kind of had an idea going into that match what was gonna like what he was planning to do, and I didn't truly have a full understanding of what I was getting into, to be honest. And a big thing that I wrote down and I noted to myself is like listen to Chewy more, because Chewy told me like probably don't pass low, like don't body lock pass. And you know what the first thing I do is he grabs my wrist, pulls me down, and I try to body lock pass, and I'm like, I remember the second I did it, I was like, no, I can't believe I'm doing this right now. And it was almost like when it happened, I was like a deer caught in headlights, because I was just like, I knew I shouldn't have done that. But it was like a inexperienced thing. I didn't respect, like what you said, I didn't respect his urgency in the position. And like if you don't respect like the really good guy's urgency, then that's what's going to happen. And it's and I would say that guy is only even like, you know, he's not even the highest level guy. So it's like it's learning that like we got to respect the urgency, because if like we lose to guys like this, who's a great competitor, it's like how are we going to beat the next best guys, right? Which is what I want to do. So I think it was learning that like we really have to like be super greedy and be like, no, dude, you're not touching my arm. I'm standing up. I'm going to pass you. Like I've learned all the passing not all, but like I've learned a lot of passing techniques from standing, and I'm confident there, but like that's what reps and competition can do for you that practice can't.
Yeah. And I think, you know, a lot of times when you think about when you get against good people, like guys that are very good, you really have to be careful about, like, you have to really be, if you have the ability to do it, you want to try to figure out, well, where does this person want me? Like, where are they trying to get me to? What position do they want? And then I got to try to do my best to not, if I can, not go there. Now, because there are times where like maybe you go up against a wrestler and you guys are going to wrestling battle and you're going to out wrestle him in that position. Yeah, no problem. But then there's the other times where it's like, okay, this person wants to be in this particular guard or this. Okay, well then we want to get out of that. I want to take them into another position. Even sometimes it's a side. You might notice that one guy only plays on this side. Well, let's go the other side. Okay, yeah. And so you're denying the person, like, you know, in like the historical battles, right? They were like back in the day, and it's still this way to some degree, right? Like guys, like armies would essentially jockey for a good positioning on a battlefield. Like there's been several instances where like an army would come up and they would have a good spot and they'd be like, hey, we're ready. And the other army would be like, no, we're not fighting you there. You know, and they would fight and they would go back and forth until one of them said, okay, fuck, we're going to fight now. And there's that jockeying for position. And again, you get to choose the ground of your choosing. That's important. So like, for instance, I had a match years ago against a really good half guard player. I watched his videos. Every time the guy got to half guard, he swept someone, got on top, and he won. Like if I looked at like 5 of his wins, and every win was started off with a guard sweep from half guard. Every one of them. I was like, okay, well then I need to not get put into half guard. So when he pulled guard, I was like, I'm not doing any half guard passes. I'm standing up. It's all standing passing, all like hip pins, toriandos, just back and forth. And I never got caught in half guard. And then, or I did at one point, and when I got into half guard, instead of getting really tight chest to chest, I was like pushing back, making space, stood up, backed out, and went back to standing. Yeah, you know, just to try to get out of the position he wanted me in. Yeah, I mean, it's the same with wrestling too, but I'm a lot better at doing it with wrestling than I am with jiu-jitsu still.
Yeah, because it's like literally the same thing. And there'd be guys that I'm like, oh, this guy's has really good underhooks. Like, either I need to stay out of the underhooks or I need to be ready to like have X counter prepared. Like that one match that we had, that the was it the second match? The like I knew that he had really good underhooks and I felt it and I was just like, okay, he has really good underhooks. It's probably gonna take more energy for me to keep the underhooks out than it is for me to throw him if he gets into the underhooks.
Was he like a Big Ten guy?
Yeah. The Big Ten champ guy, Mario Lopez or Gonzalez. Sorry, Mario Gonzalez. Who's an amazing wrestler and he's really good at grappling too. And I mean, he was probably one of the few people that I'd be like, oh, this guy was like my equal, like when we were on the feet. And but I also, it's like even with someone who's like an equal with wrestling, it's like I think I kind of beat him strategically there because I feel like that was a lot of my success in wrestling was my ability to be super strategic and take my opponents out of like their comfort zone or like be ready to counter where they're comfortable. Whereas like in jiu-jitsu, I'm still sadly developing that. I'm still developing in wrestling too. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm continuing to try to get better at wrestling and, but like with jiu-jitsu, I'm especially immature in the positions.
Well, another thing that you've done in that match and that you've done in a couple of like another winning matches you had at Worlds last year against that big NCAA wrestler was you basically wore them down with a lot of the hand fighting and the grip work. And so like the beginning of the match was a lot of hand fighting and playing on the neck with collar ties and movement feints, everything else. So they're responding, and you could watch both of those matches and you would see where all of a sudden
their back starts to go like this.
All of a sudden they start to get tired. They're a little bit, they're more tired because obviously you're breathing heavy too, but you can tell it's weighing on them a little bit more than it is you.
Yeah.
And you can see, okay, like all that work that you did to hand fight, to grip fight, to feint, and to move strategically, right? For a good chunk of that match is now paying off because now they're tired. You're not as tired, and now you can actually score the takedowns. Because if you were to try to fight those takedown battles right out of the gate while they were fresh,
so hard,
that's going to be tough. But if you can get someone worn down, I mean, every one of us, the more tired we get, the less our technique is as crisp.
Brandon, so you've kind of traveled all over, like you've been to Texas training some gyms, obviously Montreal and kind of all over. In your experience, I would say you're probably an elite wrestler, for winning national title 3 times. What do you think being at some of these gyms, training with some of the best in the world, what do you think makes people elite? Is there like some things you can point to that makes people like, why are they maybe so much better than everyone else?
So that's like another like complex question.
Sure.
But I don't think that there's like I don't think that there's necessarily one answer, right? But I think that the biggest thing is you're a person who trusts in your process and on a daily basis, like you attack it. Like this is my, like, there's so many different processes, but you say like, this is my process and this is the way I'm going to go about it. And because I've done this, I've created confidence through my process. And obviously you have to have like a good coach and stuff too. But like, I think confidence in your process is more important than necessarily the process. Obviously, there's more nuance to this. Like if you just have a completely crap process with no system, that's not going to work. But there's tons of different good ways to go about like gaining skills. As long as you find one of those ways and have a good coach who's going to help guide you, and you have an open mind and you go do stuff by yourself and like you feel good about what you did at the end of the day, I think that's what matters more than like the actual like meat and potatoes of like what's being taught. Because I trained at B Team, it was completely different. Almost every day we were doing different techniques. When I trained at New Wave, every single day was a little bit different. When I trained at JT's, every single day was pretty similar. Like, does that make sense? When we're at Derby City, every single day is pretty similar for a block, right? I love the way I learned at Derby City. I love the way I learned it at New York. I really enjoyed New Wave. I like the B Team too. For me, I think as far as like the way I learn more, a Derby City or a Essential is better for me, just because of the way that my brain processes information. I find that I get information overload really fast, so I'm not as good at processing so much technique. Whereas like I like the system where we're like, okay, for like 3 weeks we're doing chest to chest half guard. great. Like, cool, bro. That's perfect for me. Or every day we're doing these, these 5 hard drills like that, like we were doing it like essential. Okay, great. That's great. Like, because I think this obviously comes from the fact that I was a wrestler, and like the way that I was used to learning was drilling the same thing over and over again. But to answer the question, I think everyone who's successful in their sports or like their niches or whatever, they have their own process and like they trust in it. And I think that there's something valuable about being able to check off the boxes every day and be like, huh, I did that. And then when you go compete, like there's no doubt. Like I never like doubted it. Like when I would go to like nationals, and I was never like, I'm gonna lose. I was like, I could lose. I said this last time. I was like, I totally could lose, but like I'm more than the wins or losses. But like I was so sure that I wasn't gonna lose too. Because like I was really confident in my process. So I know that's a long drawn out answer. I think it's more about believing in your process than the specific process.
Sure, having a good process of some sort and then having confidence. I mean, confidence is a big thing anyway. You can get by a lot with confidence. I mean, you could take a dude, you could have one guy, you could take 2 different competitors, 2 different people, and you could have one guy who has like immaculate technique. I mean, they know every friggin' principle, concept, strategy, technique there is. If you ask them to show you how to do them, they can break them down step by step by step perfectly. But and they could both be equally like in shape and everything else. But the guy's kind of like timid. He doesn't have quite he doesn't believe in himself as much, whatever. You got a guy who's pretty good, doesn't know as much technique, has pretty decent technique in some areas, but doesn't know as much, but he's confident.
Yeah.
And he believes in himself. And he's like, this is going to work.
Yeah.
That dude's smashing the more technical guy because he's confident what he's going to do. Right. Like, again, we can all think about it. Like when you're confident about doing something, you do it with a certain level of intensity, aggression, whatever, assertiveness, whatever you want to consider it. When you're not confident about it, you kind of hold back. You're not so sure of yourself. And so, again, if you've got a guy or a person who really believes in their training, they're confident that it's going to make them better. It's going to make them better on some level. It's as long as it's like you said, it's decent.
Yeah,
As long as it's like not some snake oil stuff. As long as they have like some real process, if they're confident, it's going to make them better.
That exactly. That's what I wanted to preface with it. Is like it can't be like some like the McDojo stuff, right? Like it can't be something like crazy. Yeah, like that's a whole just thing in itself. But it's like you have to have like some type of like clear fundamental process that is like here's. When I was in college, I was learning I was doing this TEFL course. So it was like teaching English to foreign languages thing. And it was like one of the things that is said in the course was if a teacher can't tell you what their process is, they're not a good teacher. Meaning like if you can't tell me why you're doing what you're doing, you don't understand why you're teaching it. And it's like, so every good teacher has structure, has some sort of structure. Obviously, maybe there's nuance to that. But for the most part, like if there's like a decent structure there, that means there's usually going to be good guys that come out of that decent structure, right? And that's why like lots of the guys who are winning are not just from the big name teams, quote unquote big name teams. Like there's guys winning from everywhere at like the highest level who are at gyms you've never heard of, but like their name, right? But you don't really know their gym. But you can probably guess that if you go into their gym, they have a pretty good process and a pretty good structure. Even though they might not be the best gym. And there's also guys that might be at the best gyms in the world and like they're not necessarily confident in the process. And maybe that gym's not for them, but they stay for certain reasons.
Right. Because there's going to be plenty of people at these big name gyms that you'll never hear of.
Yeah.
You've never heard of. And then, like you said, there's guys that come from gyms you've never heard of, but they're really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's just trusting in the process. And another point that I wanted to add, which I think is super important, is like faith in your coaches. Like I have faith in Chewy. I have faith in like Coach Ruff was my college wrestling coach. We talked about this last time. It was just like when I would go into the wrestling room, Coach Ruff would look at me and say, I'm not gonna say it, but like who's got the big swinging hoo-ha, you know what I mean? And I'd be like, I got the biggest one, coach. And then you'd go out to the match and you'd slap hands and he'd smack you in the face and he'd say it to you and you'd be like, that's me. Like I'm the freaking man. Like let's go. Like I got this team on my I got the team with me, I think so those are 2 big things: trust in the process and having faith in your coaches. And then obviously and lastly is like faith in your teammates, having like good teammates and having a good relationship. Like I choose to train at certain gyms when I travel because of the environment and the people I'm around, there's actually better gyms, like quote unquote better competition gyms that I could be at that I didn't vibe with as much. But I feel like I'll have more success at X gym because I have like this good connection with the coach. I have this good connection with my drilling partners and my rolling partners. I don't think it's where you are. I think it's, you know, who you're with, your faith and your process, and like your faith in your teammates. And I think like you combine all that with like good strength and conditioning and good diet and a little bit of luck, and then I think that's how someone becomes successful. I could be wrong though.
I love it. Well, you've been successful, so man, it's gonna be I'll be sad when you leave.
Me too.
Obviously, you know.
And now I instituted a new rule at the gym.
Okay.
Attractive ladies
are not allowed.
Attractive ladies that are not sticking around, that are just visiting, they don't get to come in.
No single attractive.
No women. Single attractive women. Because I've gotten
there's Chewy gets left, huh?
Chad and then Brandon. No, I'm happy. It's like you know, Chad's down in Tennessee. He's got his own gym. He's doing great. Yeah. You know, you'll go out and do whatever. You'll do great. You know, it's what has to happen, right?
So, like, Brandon, if people want to follow you on social media, if people want to get your instructionals, if they want to train with you, get a seminar, whatever it is, how can they do that?
Okay, everything is Brandon Reed 3X. So Instagram's Brandon Reed 3X.
It's because he used to be really fat and he wore 3X shirts.
Yeah, that's the story. The website's brandonreed3x.com for all my instructionals. You can join my email list by going to brandonreed3x.com/email. But other than that, join the email list. That's the most important thing. And shout out to LXB too. These guys are my sponsors. They help me out. They hook me up for hotels and travel and stuff for tournaments. So these are the homies.
Yep.
So that's it.
Yep. You're cool, man. Thank you. Chew, you got anything? Are you sad? You crying over there?
He's crying. Who cut the onions?
Chew's crying.
Yeah.
We all have to. Chewy, I'm leaving you too.
He's drinking water.
I'm leaving you too. He's drinking alcohol back there.
Yeah, he's got whiskey.
Yeah. All right, man. We appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed the podcast with Brandon. Apologize to any of you guys listening to that first half of social media marketing business talk.
I think it was interesting. I think it's super interesting. A lot of people are into that space or want to get in that space. And I think it's cool to see that Brandon actually got in that space and did something. You've been doing that for years, and Brandon's kind of newer into it, and just watching him grow. And the main thing, the point about that, like I kind of brought it up a little bit. I think it gave him the green light to kind of really dive into competing more and training more and doing something he loves, because it's all circular. It all has to do with kind of jiu-jitsu or wrestling, kind of, which is his bread and butter.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Like, we didn't talk about it much, but right around, I think it was September of 2021, like we were talking, he was getting some traction going with his Instagram, and so I was like, dude, let's or was it 22? I can't remember what year it was, because it's all blurred together.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, it was September of that year, and he was getting some traction, and so we had a Zoom call, and basically, you know, I was like, here's how we're going to turn this into an actual like thing that could support you. Let me show you how this actually works as a business, right? Because again, like as I've talked about, I really don't care about like being trendy and getting 1 million views. I care about, like, am I actually helping someone? Am I being a good coach?
Yeah.
And then can this support me as well? You know, because again, there was this thing that happened in YouTube back in 2017 they called it the adpocalypse, where a lot of YouTube creators who were dependent upon the ad revenues, they're there and that's all they had. They didn't have any sort of other back sort of like, what do we call that? Like
backup plan, or
not backup plan, but they didn't have any structure beyond that. And so what happened was YouTube changed the way that their ads worked. And so a lot of people all of a sudden, like, the ad rep was like, we don't want to deal with any people like that. We don't want our ads to go to those people, or we're going to change how much we're paying you. And all of a sudden you saw these videos of these YouTube creators just bawling their eyes out because they're sad, because all of a sudden, you know, they're making like some serious dough, and now they're making very little, and they become dependent upon that. Again, if you're going to run a business, you don't want it to be dependent upon anyone else's thing. You want to have options. And again, that's kind of what we wanted to avoid. So we worked together, we got a plan ironed out, and the dude executed, and that was it. Right. And it was a very simple plan, but he did the damn thing and he went after it. And again, that's a big deal, right? That's all it takes. Is like, you just got to take something simple. We live in the world of endless possibilities. when you're doing jiu-jitsu, you live in a world of endless possibilities.
For sure.
That means jack, right? Possibilities are what could be. What it really comes down is to focus, bring some order into your game, order into your life, whatever it is you're doing, and you get focused on something and just do it. And a lot of times it's going to be stuff that's really small and simple, but you get focused on that stuff and you make things happen. He did that and it worked out for him, and he's running with it. And again, he'll turn it into something brand new and really cool as he gets going, and as he grows as a man. So
yeah, it's awesome, man. It's been cool watching that.
And so, guys, again, hopefully you enjoyed the podcast, got something from it, maybe an idea to chew on for your own training, or possibly your social media business stuff. And guys, thanks for joining us again. Thanks to our, oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you guys something about something coming up. I have a slew of tournaments coming up, mostly sort of in the Midwest, East Coast area. The Jiu-Jitsu Open. This is going to be sort of our tester year to try it out. We did our first Jiu-Jitsu Open back in July. Went really well. People love the format. We had to cut it off because it was getting too full. We're starting off our next one in February of 2024. And then afterwards, we have several, I think 6, maybe more. I can't quite remember right offhand, but we have a bunch of these tournaments coming up. It has a really unique format that I've put together with my buddy Jeff to produce a tournament that would allow people to get lots of experience, to sort of turn off the nerves a little bit so they can just get out there and see what it feels like. Because like we were talking about going to a competition, sometimes you have to feel it to experience it. And so, for instance, when you go to a competition and you finally let go and you just try to go after someone, and you're no longer doing that what if game or the worry game or the anxiety game, it is an interesting feeling. And once you know what it feels like, you can get there again. If you never experience it, it's hard to get back there. So the rule set will, one, allow you to get lots of points, which will help facilitate that, or lots of matches. And it'll also allow you to have lots of chances to continue to compete, because again, we're not going to do, there's no weight classes and there's no it's a round robin style, which means we're using Madison bracketing, which essentially means we're going to pair you guys up into weight classes that essentially as close to we can of weight, up to 5 people, and you're going to round robin it out. You're going to go with every person in your division. And so that could mean up to 4 matches per division. You can do gi and no gi. So you could have 8 matches in a day, or more, because we do an absolute 2. But let's just say you do the 2 divisions, 8 matches. A lot of you guys go to jiu-jitsu competitions, you don't get 8 matches. Sometimes you do, but a lot of you guys do not. Because what happens? You go there and there's 2 guys in my division. But then you look up and the guy up there, he's got like a bazillion people in his division, right? Because you think about like a 4-match bracket. Okay, 2, 4, 8, 16. Right? You're talking about 16 people. Right? Do you get 16 people every time you sign up for a bracket? Nope, probably not. So again, you're going to get a lot of matches, and I think it's going to be a great experience for you guys that go into the matches and compete. And if you want to get more details, check my social media, check the show notes from this podcast. We'll have some links around there, and check out the Jiu-Jitsu Open. And thanks to our sponsor, Charlotte's Web, for helping make this podcast happen. If you guys would like to check out their website and get your hands on premier CBD products made by a company that third-party tests their stuff. Again, I've talked about this before. It's an unregulated market. CBD is big. It's exciting, whatever. But again, it's unregulated, which means that people could be putting stuff in the bottles and the products of CBD that aren't labeled, or they change the dosages up. There's a lot of variables there because of the unregulation. And again, Charlotte's Web is one of the few companies that third-party tests their stuff to say, this is what is in this thing. They have versions of it that are THC. They're labeled THC free, which means they have enough where it's low enough that if you were tested by certain testing regulations, you wouldn't test positive for THC in your system. You can do your research on that. But if you're one of those people that gets tested for stuff, can't piss hot for THC, it could be an option for you. And then they have all sorts of other products. If you want to check their stuff out, go to charlottesweb.com. The promo code is Chewjitsu30 for 30% off. So Chewjitsu30. Also, thanks to my buddy Matt at Epic Roll. Epic Roll is a great company. It's a jiu-jitsu company that was made by a black belt who then trains and rolls just like all the people that he's serving, which is important to me because there's a lot of companies that are just putting stuff out there on the internet to try to sell you things, make money off you that aren't a part of our community. But he's out there. He's training himself. He's supporting a lot of young up and coming competitors, trying to help them out so they can get out there and do their stuff. You'll see different competitors who have the Epic Roll stuff on. So I like that. I dig that. Good dude. So good. If you want to check out his stuff and get some new t-shirts, no-gi shorts, rash guards, gis, whatever it is that you might like jiu-jitsu related, epicrollbjj.com is the website. Jiu-Jitsu20 is the code. And guys, if you want to check out Manscaped, Manscaped is the premier men's grooming company. I've been using their stuff for a number of years now. They originally came on as a sponsor. I was not thrilled about it because I didn't really want to talk about a ball trimmer, because that used to be their thing, was ball trimmers. Started using it. I use it for my body. You was using it for a beard trimmer until they came out with a really nice beard trimmer, which has like a dial. You don't have to change the heads on it anymore. You just move the dial up and down, which is really convenient. And then once you sort of get used to your measurements, then you're good to go. But again, they make a lot of really awesome products for men to groom themselves, right? So again, just like the ladies out there, they have like a bazillion products to make themselves look pretty and all this stuff like that. If you're a guy and you're trying to make yourself look good, it's good to have those products to make it happen. And they've got really great trimmers, great body washes, great lotions, everything else, the whole thing. Anything you need as a guy to look good, smell good, all that stuff. You can check them out at manscaped.com. The promo code is Chewjitsu20 for 20% off, and you get free shipping. And guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do it by two options. One is cost-free, one is not. The cost-free version would be to get onto whatever website or app you listen to this podcast on and leave us a review if it's possible. And if you do that, we appreciate you. And then the other version, the other way that you can do that, which is not cost-free, is to go to the website, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast, THE Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. And when you go there, you can sign up for an inexpensive price, get access to a very large database of exclusive content that we put up. Again, everything from jiu-jitsu warm-ups for all you people that are in jiu-jitsu that have tight-ass hips and everything else, and you want to figure out how to loosen stuff up. It doesn't take a long time, but you got to give it some love. Again, my buddy Eugene is a doctor of physical therapy. He put some stuff together specifically for, hips and shoulders and everything else, these different body parts that we use in jiu-jitsu. And then we also have some things like recorded seminars in there, as well as rolling sessions, an ad-free version of this podcast, everything and more at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. And guys, if you want to get my daily email, which I go into everything from books that I'm reading, philosophical ideas I'm chewing on, to training things that are, just training tips, things that are going on in the gym, and random stories that I like to share. Here's a fun one. I shared this one on the email list one time. So I'll share this story with you guys from high school wrestling, and then I will leave you. So this will be like the little Easter egg for all of you guys that stuck around instead of saying, I was reading the ads, I'm done. Which I know some of you guys do. Mm-hmm. So when I was in high school wrestling, I was telling the story the other day at the gym too. My coach had this really, really rough training session one day, right? A really rough practice. We didn't do very well at one of the meets. And so our coach put us through the ringer. And it involved one thing with the coaches do. He called it 25s. So basically what we would do is we'd start at 25 and we would do 25 push-ups, 25 setups, 25 sprawls, right? And then we would go to 24.
That sounds horrible.
And then 23, right? So 25. So it was a thing. And we're like, if you were being like, they would kill us. It would be 25s. So we were doing 25s that day. I was not there. And basically he strung that whole 25 for the whole practice. Basically someone would do something wrong. He'd be, we're starting back over. I mean, just like you're mentally messing with people, right? Like you're basically just trying to get them to crack. And he got some of these high schoolers to crack. So anyway, that's when he goes, I miss it because at my grandmother's funeral, my grandmother had passed away. She was sick for a while and she finally passed away. And so I came back to the wrestling room that next day. And I remember I get there and everybody's like, man, coach is mad at you. Cause apparently he's like, where's Tugboat? I'm wrestling. Where's Tugboat at? So I get there, I walk into the wrestling, the mat room, and immediately my coach comes up to me, sees me, runs at me. He's like, where were you yesterday? And then before I could get any words out, like he's coming at me, I could tell he's going to try to grab my head. So I shoot in on him for a takedown. And he grabs me, flips me over, and then he gets on top of me into like basically a mount position. Essentially pins to get to him top. And he's a big fella. He's like, probably 300 pounds. And he fish hooks me. So basically he's got his index fingers in my mouth. For you guys watching, you get a good look. But just basically he's got two index fingers and he's spreading my mouth out. Like remember when those people would do that? Like there's that game where you put the thing in your mouth like that. And I can talk about you can't hear it. And so he's saying, he goes, where were you yesterday, son? I can't speak. And he keeps asking me, and he's getting a kick out of it. And then he eventually, he gets off me and says, he goes, where were you? I get up, I go up and I had this little memorial card from like, they give it to you like, in memory of, right. So in memory of Mabel. So I go in there and I was like, I was at my grandmother's funeral, sir. And I hand it to him, and he looks at me, and he's like, like it's one of those ones you talk about putting your foot in your mouth. He goes, but then he looks at me and goes, Jesus Christ, son, why didn't you say something? So it was a fun part. I shared that in one of the emails a while back. But again, guys, anyway, if you want to get that stuff, you can go to my website at chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. You can join up. I'll give you some free ebooks for joining, and you get my daily email. You can unsubscribe at any time. I won't spam you or send you like random crap. It'll be stuff that is written by me. And if you reply, you will get a reply from me. That's like the little part of the internet that I focus on the most. And so again, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the podcast with Brandon. We will talk to you next time.